Bitcoin is finally broken out, ladies and gentlemen. We broke out of the symmetrical triangle pattern. Bitcoin is also broken out of the inverse head and shoulders pattern that we were also discussing on previous videos. Bitcoin and the stock market, so other risk on assets, are reacting pretty well to the CPI data. But apart from this, I want to get into why Bitcoin is super bullish on the macro time frame. I think right now is probably one of the best times to be accumulating Bitcoin from my perspective, and I want to share why that is the case. So we will go into ETF data, we'll go into some breaking news regarding other topics, and of course, macroeconomic data, which is not too great for the macro landscape, but in the micro, ironically, it is not too bad at all. So let's get straight into it. I also want to discuss my position on Bitcoin and many more things. It is the final video in this 3-video series. But don't worry, it's of course I'm going to continue making so many more videos with a lot more information too. It's just that these past 3 videos, I wanted to include a lot more macroeconomic data and draw conclusions from different aspects. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. I hope you enjoyed them. And if you did, make sure to leave a like on this video too to show your support, and subscribe if you're not a part of the Crypto Kids community. I can't wait to grow more and more with you guys, literally, literally, and in terms of the channel too. But with that said, let's get straight into the Bitcoin analysis and see what we could be doing here in the 4-hourly time frame. Now, in the past video, I said that I'm waiting for a break above 63.2K. And the reason for that was, well, we were forming this falling wedge pattern, and 63.2 would give us a confirmation that we were breaking out of this falling wedge pattern. In terms of the daily time frame, I really like to see retests on the falling wedge. Usually that does happen with Bitcoin, especially if you go and zoom out, whereas on the shorter term time frames, you do not tend to see retests quite often. You tend to just explode towards the upside. So at this point, as Bitcoin was breaking, I added to my personal long positions, and I also, well, I've been accumulating Bitcoin here on this long position on our $10,000 trading challenge over on Bitflex. So this is the 10K trading challenge. I actually scaled this long position to 5K in margin. So that's over half of our total portfolio, but that's okay because our average entry price is now at 60K. I also increased the leverage. So we currently have 75% in profits, and we've been scaling into this position so many times ever since 43K. So massive, massive congrats. And if you are looking for, of course, a place to be trading Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, you can do so using the link in the description down below. But going back into the Bitcoin analysis, I still want to add more capital to my longs. I still want to go full in 100%, and just ride the entire Bitcoin wave. Hopefully, the final leg in the parabola back to, well, first of all, the prior all-time highs, and hopefully towards the $90,000 territory. But before I can do that, I need a bullish confirmation here on the 4-day time frame. It's just my own trading principles. It's so amazing that Bitcoin is pumping this week, because if it wasn't, we were heading in a terrible direction where Consensio could have potentially crossed completely bearish, and this didn't happen in a while. The last time that this happened was around here, and Bitcoin, Bitcoin was in a sideways consolidation pattern. So the actual time when all 3 moving averages of Consensio crossed into each other bearishly was in the past bull market top. So that would have been absolutely terrible. I'm super happy that Bitcoin is avoiding that drop. And if we do get a confirmation here on the 3 and 7 period moving averages, just like we did when Bitcoin was breaking out, funnily enough, from the inverse head and shoulders pattern that was forming after the significant crash of the spot ETF approval, we had a bullish confirmation again between the 3 and 10 SMAs, and Bitcoin continued skyrocketing towards the upside. So as soon as we get that confirmation, then I will be going all in to my long positions. I have scaled into them currently. And in the short-term time frame, I think Bitcoin still has more room to go, at least until we see a bearish crossover on the stochastic. If we do see a bearish crossover, that could be a time to be exiting short-term positions. So that is the only thing that I'm looking out for. But finally speaking, on the short-term time frame, of course, volume, we had a huge decreasing amount of volume. And finally, Bitcoin was able to have a big green volume candle. So volume predicts price essentially, and that's why we can expect a little bit more price continuation towards the upside. Where we're at right now is pretty good resistance. So if we fail here, then we fail here. If we don't, then I think 66.7K would be the next level for Bitcoin to head towards. Now, why is Bitcoin pumping? CPI data, it's not that bullish. I mean, if we look at the CPI data, it didn't come out that bullish. It's only 0.1% lower. And if we look at the core CPI, this was the real bullish metric. Core CPI is what the FOMC uses to kind of decide on what the interest rates are going to be. And 3.6% is still so far away from the 2% target. And, we know that they play with the underlying basket of goods. And it's just not a correct representation of the current state of the economy. The S&P has been reversing pretty drastically after hitting the 21 EMA. We talked about this. Bitcoin did the exact same thing, but we were kind of losing correlation with the S&P, and Bitcoin was not seeing the reversal that the stock market was seeing over the past few days. So if you have been watching the videos for the past at least 2 weeks, we mentioned the bearish crossover on the Dixie, which represents the value of the US dollar. And because we trade Bitcoin against USD, like you can see here, if the value of USD falls, then of course the price of Bitcoin is going to increase. So the dollar value has been falling. We predicted this. We said that, look, we have a bearish crossover on the MACD. The last time we had bearish crossovers, the value of the dollar significantly depleted and Bitcoin had a huge increase towards the upside. So we were expecting something similar to take place, and it is currently. We had a bearish crossover on Ichimoku. I think the dollar value is at a good level of support. It's possible that we come down to the bottom cloud. It does have a Japanese name, but I think it's the Komu cloud, right? So the lower band here, we could find a retest, and that would allow Bitcoin to reach potentially 66K and then see a reversal or a rejection. It will all depend on how the dollar value will hold up in the Komu cloud. US treasuries are falling. People are not bullish on the macro environment for the United States economy, and that is understandable. We have a couple of economic factors that will help us understand better on why the macro environment is not the best at all. If you're wondering about Ethereum, I think Ethereum is pretty much like it's not looking good for the Ethereum ETFs. I don't know if you heard, but most likely the SEC is going to classify it as a security. But I will be bringing on James Seyfarth, back on Friday this week to tell us all about the process with Ethereum and if Ethereum is dead. Surprisingly, Bitcoin has been pumping, and so has the Bitcoin dominance. We're not seeing the altcoins follow Bitcoin's move towards the upside. It's only been Bitcoin leading the market. And I just want to iterate that Bitcoin is evidently going to go higher, in my opinion. Of course, nothing in this video is financial advice, but if we go back in history and look at every single time that Bitcoin is broken above all-time highs, we have continued drastically towards the upside. Here, it's like over 6,000%, 7,000% increase from all-time high to all-time high. Here, it's almost 1,000% increase. And so far, right, we've increased by 400-something% when we hit a new all-time high. So the question is, how much is Bitcoin going to go up from now and onwards? You can understand, like we can see that obviously the returns are diminishing. They do reduce a lot. But now that we've reached a new all-time high, I think it's not over yet. I mean, Bitcoin will consolidate at this all-time high, just like it did multiple cycles ago. But, even if we see a 100% increase, that will take us to $125,000 and especially with what is going on right now with the ETFs, I do not think it is hard for us to do that at all. Now today, if you recall from yesterday's video, it was the final deadline day for the ETF issuers to submit, or not the ETF issuers, but asset managers with over $100 million in management to submit their 13F filings. Now this allows us to see what they exactly hold. And a lot of the big banks and institutions turned out to be holding the Bitcoin spot ETFs. I was getting a bit concerned that, we were not pumping enough for this amount of bullish news, because we can see a $24 trillion pension fund manager allocating $162 million into Bitcoin, and we were not pumping. We saw the EU 12 trillion euro investment market potentially opening up to Bitcoin ETFs, and Bitcoin had simply no reaction. We had Morgan Stanley, another $6.5 trillion private wealth management company that said we want to make sure that everybody has access to the Bitcoin ETFs, posting this in April, but Bitcoin had no reaction. Now we have the head of the previous chief of ETFs in BlackRock, who is super bullish on Bitcoin. I mean, he's been on interviews multiple times demonstrating how bullish he is on Bitcoin. And he's been saying that actually tokenizing assets in the traditional finance industry and putting it on the blockchain is going to give us so much value. Copy paste of what Larry Fink has been saying, because you're reducing the amount of barrier, right? You're reducing the amount of middlemen that a traditional finance product has to go through in order to reach the retail, in order to reach the institution. For example, if I want to buy a stock from you and you are the broker, I buy the stock from you, but you need to go to somebody else, and that has to be processed and that has to be checked by real people. It takes like 3 business days for the entire transaction to be settled. If you put that on the blockchain, unless it's on Solana, then it's pretty much instant and it's pretty reliable at the same time. And you're you're increasing the flow of money across the world, and you're increasing its speed, and an increased velocity of money results to a higher GDP, which means economic growth. So why would you not do it? It makes so much sense. And that is ultimately why we're seeing companies like MasterCard, JP Morgan, Visa, even BlackRock developing their own in-house blockchain solutions. And once news comes out that this is happening, I think that will be the new narrative for Bitcoin. I was mentioning that Bitcoin was currently narrativeless. I think this will be the new narrative that can push Bitcoin towards the $90,000 regions. Apart from that, Calamos, which is I think an options contract provider, they are developing a product which reduces the loss risk that you have if you purchase Bitcoin, and I think increases the upside. So obviously it sounds, options are super complicated. I know it sounds like, hold on a second. So you're telling me that you reduce 100% of the downside risk while capturing a portion of the upside risk, or the upside potential? That sounds like a no-brainer investment. Well, yeah, options do not work like that. But what we do know is options bring so much volume to any asset when it does come to the market. And I think it will be incredible for us. And just another note here, in this interview, I just remembered, basically, the guy, so Sami or Salim, he mentions that when they launched the gold ETF 20 years ago, their aim was to reduce barrier to entry. Their aim was to make buying Bitcoin, or buying gold, more easier. And that is exactly what they're doing today. A fundamental principle in all of life is, if you make something easier to purchase, it's going to go up if there is already existing demand for it. The reason why we're early in Bitcoin, we're early in crypto, is because it's still hard to purchase, it's hard to hold, it takes a lot of education. But when it becomes the new normal, then it will stabilize in price because everybody would have already FOMO'd into it. So the reason why you're early is because it is still super complicated to purchase Bitcoin, purchase crypto, and store it. But moving away, the ETF flippening, the actual flippening, is about to take place because the amount of Bitcoin held at BlackRock is about to surpass the amount of Bitcoin held at Grayscale, another bullish factor specifically in the ETF world. And speaking about the ETFs, I mean, the great thing about the ETF the people who purchase the ETFs, which are institutions, they are likely to hold on to these ETFs, and whenever markets do crash, like we saw from on-chain data, they do not paper hand their stock. They hold on to it because they evidently purchase the ETF because they believe in it in the long term, especially if you look at a pension fund or any other long-term fund. So they will not paper hand their Bitcoin ETF once they purchase it. That's another beautiful thing about these ETFs. And by the way, I will be summarizing everything that I've said in the past 3 videos because it was a lot of extensive research. So that's going to be on my CryptoKid newsletter. I have a link down in the description if you want to sign up. I will be posting it anywhere in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So stay tuned. It will be absolutely fantastic in terms of data, in terms of information. this was crazy. Like we talked about this yesterday. I just want to cover all the incredibly bullish narratives in this video. Like President Trump, the future, most likely future president, according to poll data, he's talking about Bitcoin. He's saying that he's bullish. He's saying that Gary Gensler is not doing a good job with crypto. People do not understand how incredible this is. And when he does come into government, because he is a free market economist or a free market politician, he will likely reduce the amount of tight regulation that is in crypto. And ultimately, Bitcoin and crypto, they're already massive, right? Currently, there's 200 million people, or actually 100 million people who use Bitcoin specifically. And if we look at the history of inventions, history of massive inventions, they've all been doubted. They've all been doubted by massive people who then ended up adopting the technology they doubted in the first place. And I think the same thing is going to be happening to Bitcoin like it is even currently. I just think that, we have 6 billion people that use a phone, 1.25 billion people who have cars, 5.3 billion people who access the internet, and Bitcoin is still growing. This tweet I will have to go into in more detail. I will do that on the Crypto Kid Friday show on the Moon's channel, so stay tuned. That will be incredible because this has a lot of things to unpack, which I simply can't do in a 15-minute time period. But finally, moving on to the macroeconomic data, the amount of money being printed is going back bullish. So if you print more money, then you're increasing the economic stimuli to be pumping the markets. That's why I said in the short term, the stock market will likely pump, so will Bitcoin. But in the macro, printing more money when you have $40 trillion of national debt is a very bad idea. So short term, you're providing relief into the market, but in the long term, between 12 to 18 months, it will bring a massive recession. Retail has so much money in their hands. They have so much money from saving. As soon as the interest rates are cut, they will go all in on the market. So expect one final boom before the massive recession that we're predicting will be taking place. And look, even though money printing is going on and everything looks bullish on picture, if we look at the stock market, nearly 40 million families, or 29% of the population, have jobs but struggle to cover basic needs. And apart from that, how bad has affordability become? Well, 20% of Americans are skipping meals to afford monthly housing costs. That is ridiculous. The inflation level is so much higher than what is displayed here. And, the actual truth is this: 1 out of 5 Americans are skipping meals to afford their homes. And the housing market is terrible. It's like comparable to the 2008 financial crisis. So everything will downturn eventually. We're seeing the yield curve being inverted for over 500 days. People are not bullish on the macroeconomy, hence why the 10-year bonds are dropping. There is going to be a huge crash. There is going to be a huge recession. It will happen most likely between 12 to 18 months. But before that, because a lot of people have a lot of money saved up, I think Bitcoin and other assets will continue climbing. The value of the dollar is currently dropping. It's dropping a lot more than I predicted, but that's good for Bitcoin. That is good for Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin breaks out of this falling wedge with a confirmation, we would be confirming this inverse head and shoulders breakout, and things will be looking great. But guys and girls, thank you so much for watching. That was another extensive video. Like I said, the future videos that I post will not be as extensive. I'll probably limit it to 8 minutes, but I would definitely recommend watching the past 3 videos, including this one, for more macroeconomic views, for more fundamental understandings of why Bitcoin is bullish or where Bitcoin is going overall. But guys and girls, thank you so much for watching. Take care, have a great day, and I'll be seeing you all very shortly. So take care, guys, and bye-bye.